Hey folks, Olin here. Let's talk for a little bit about using JavaScript with variables, both text and numeric, in RPG Maker MV for a bit. Now, that might sound a little scary, like you might look at this down here, what I have, math.max and all that craziness. You might look at that and be, what the hell's going on? That sounds complex, I'm out of here. But I promise you, it is really, really very simple. Now, before we delve into it, let's go over the most important thing that we're going to need to know how to do today, and that is just simply call a variable using JavaScript here, right? And so MV gives you this like $game variables little object, and you can do a couple things with that. We're going to focus on just simply calling a variable's value, right? So that is game variables with a $sign in front and with variables capitalized. Then you type .value, open and close parentheses, and then inside parentheses there you simply just type the number of the variable that you'd like. So variable 1, you put a 1, variable 10, you put a 10. It's really quite simple. Now, I've set up a little test project here just to show you a couple of things that we can do with variables. Certainly not everything by any stretch of the imagination, but just the basics that you probably might need to or want to use in your projects. Alright, so let's go over some of the stuff that you can do with numbers here, shall we? Now, into variable 1, we're going to put 10, and let's go for 5 into variable 2, right? So, you remember in the first video I mentioned how silly it was in RPG Maker that in order to add two numbers and assign it to a third variable, you first have to assign the first variable to the third variable and then add the third variable and the second variable, right? Well, with scripting you can just quite simply do $game variables .value and then put the first variable you want, and then plus $game variables .value and the second variable number, right? And it's simple. That's just calling everything right there. So much easier. It makes a heck of a lot more sense to me. Hopefully it does for you too. And then JavaScript and the math object, right? So JavaScript has a built-in object that does a lot of mathematical functions, from exponents to logarithms to like sine, tangent, cosine. It can round up, it can round down, it can actually create random numbers, although it's simpler to use the random number option built into MV. But yeah, let's look a little bit at that, shall we? So the math object is a little bit more complicated, not terribly so, but just a smidge. What you're going to want to do to use the math object is you want to type math with a capital M, and then whatever function that you're trying to call. There's a full list of those at the W3 Schools website. I'm gonna put an annotation up. If you are on mobile, I'll put a link down below. Just go check it out. There's a lot of stuff, more than you'll probably gonna need to do for your projects, but it's all there. We're gonna be looking at highest value, lowest value, how to raise it to a power, and then square root. So, highest and lowest value, the format is really simple. It's going to be .max or .min, and then in parentheses you're going to want to put a comma-separated list of all the values that you want it to sort through. For our case, it's $game variables .value1 and .value2. You'll see it pretty much pulls out whatever's highest and lowest. Pretty simple. For raising it to a power, that's also really simple. It is math.pow, and then in parentheses you're going to want to put the base value. In our case we're doing 10, or $game variables .value1, and then comma, and then after that you want to put a space and whatever value you want to raise it to. So if I wanted to have 10 raised to the 5th, it would be game variables .value1, comma, space, game variables .value2. You could have whatever you want in there and it'll work just fine. And then square root is .sqrt, then just whatever value you want to take the square root of. So we're doing $game variables .value2, and here you'll note that it is pulling 2, which is not the square root of 5, right? Well, that's another issue. I'll talk to you about that in a sec. Let's go over to decimal explanations, and I, for some reason, have not set this up correctly. Hold on. real quick. All right, so what you have here are game variables .value 5, 6, 7, and 8. So in variable 5, I just put in the value of 5. Now in this one, I took game variable 5, divided it by 2, right? Which is not 2. This one, I took this value times 10, and you'll note it's 20. But in this one, I took the game variable of 5, divided it by 2, multiplied it by 10, and you'll see that it did use the decimal at some point. What happens, what appears to happen here is the math function, the math object in JavaScript has an option called like .floor and .ceil, and what those will do is they will round down or up, so kill everything in the decimal spot. So it appears that when you assign a variable, like when you assign a value to a variable, it automatically floors that variable and gets rid of the entire decimal spot. But until you've assigned it, you're working with all the decimals that you might want. So you can have like pi in the calculations, you can have all sorts of craziness. But just keep in mind that once you assign it to that variable, you're going to lose everything in the decimal place. So either do a math floor or a math ceil, depending on if you want to round that value to round it up or round it down. It's pretty much that simple. Just something to keep in mind when you're playing with these. So string or text variables are also pretty simple, but there is the added quirk of MV not letting you directly take text and inputting it into the game outside of a name input for a character. So in order to get around this little quirk, what you do is you just set a blank character that you're never going to use, and then have the player input whatever text they want, right? And then store that into a variable. Now, in order to store a character's name into a variable, it's just another script call. It's pretty simple. It is $GameActors.actor, and then the in parentheses, it's the number of the actor that you want. In my case, it is actor 4, and then .name open close parentheses. Pretty simple. So for here, it's $GameActors.actor open parentheses 4 close parentheses .name open close parentheses. Pretty simple. And then you can just muck around with that little string if you'd like. So there's a couple things things that you might want to do, like are 2 lowercase and 2 uppercase, and that'll just as it sort of is obvious. Game variables .value and then the number of the variable that you want .to lowercase will just drop everything to lowercase. You might want to use that if you want to check for people inputting curses in the text that you wanted or something along those lines, because that way you don't have to check for capital and lowercase in order to see it's all there. You can just say whatever curse word that you want to check for, or whatever word that you want to check for, just have it in lowercase and then check equality there. It's which is another little thing I'll get into in another video. But you can also do 2 uppercase. Let's say you want to input a bit of text, like you want to input a name of something for a character run business or something like that. But then some reason, some part of the game, you want someone to yell the name of that business. You can just do 2 uppercase. I don't know why I didn't change that when I copy pasted in my little project, but it's game variables.valuable 2 uppercase, not 2 lowercase. And yeah, that's those 2. Those are things that I could see people using. There's a couple other things that are fun to mess around with, but I don't offhand see a lot of uses for. But you can do it. There is the .char@at method. So with that one, you do game variables.value whatever .char@, and then whatever number you want. So char@ 7 will pull out the 7th character in whatever text is input. So I am just a guy, the 7th character is S, right? You can put in whatever you want, and then you can check on that if you'd like to. Then you can extract a subset of text from within the text that's been input. So that is .substring, and you put in for this case here, I'm checking in between letters 5 and 10, and that just extracts just from I'm just a guy. But what you would do is game variables.value whatever variable it is, and then 5 comma space 10. That's it. That'll just pull out whatever text between those two numbers that you were given. And again, keep in mind that the maximum size for a string is 16, because that's the largest size name that you can input. And then there is the .replace method. And so, just for example, I'm replacing Guy with Guy making MV tutorials. That is pretty simple. It is game variables .value whatever variable .replace, and then inside parentheses you do whatever you're wanting to search for, right? So it'll search for Guy, and every time there's Guy, it'll replace whatever you want with it. So you put inside quotes the text that you're looking for, comma, space, and then inside quotes, double quotes. I know I use single quotes here, but double quotes. You put whatever you want to replace it with. So I am just a guy becomes I am just a guy making MV tutorials. You could also search for like A and replace A with, you know, this is a vowel, and it would be I, this is value, M, just, this is value, Guy. You know, it's pretty fun, limited use, but you can play around with it. It could be fun. And yeah, that's just the basics of using JavaScript with variables, both number and text variables in MV. Again, you can find more things to do with these at the W3C Schools website. Go check that out. It's really simple. Hopefully I showed you there's really not a ton of complexity to it at this stage. And hopefully it was helpful to you folks. And until next time, later.